The gavel fell with the kind of finality that changed lives. Marcus Coleman stood in the defendant's section of Harris County Family Court, his fingers gripping the edge of the scarred wooden table hard enough to leave marks.
Your Honor,
Judge
I
Marcus
object to this
Reed
line of
sat
questioning.
elevated on the
It's
bench,
irrelevant and
reading
prejudicial to
glasses
my
perched
client's
on his
case.
nose, the Texas flag hanging limp behind him in the over-conditioned air. The courtroom smelled like old paper and fear and the institutional disinfectant that couldn't quite mask decades of broken families. Primary physical custody is awarded to Marcus Coleman. The words landed like oxygen after drowning. Marcus's knees wanted to buckle, but he locked them, kept his spine straight, kept his face neutral the way the Marine Corps had taught him 8 years ago. Beside him, Jamal Washington, overworked legal aid attorney in a suit that had seen better decades, exhaled hard enough to disturb the papers stacked between them. Across the aisle, Lauren Whitmore sat frozen between her parents. Robert Whitmore's face had gone the kind of red that preceded heart attacks or violence, his knuckles white against the armrest. Patricia Whitmore stared straight ahead, her designer clothes and perfect posture radiating the kind of cold fury that came with old Houston money confronting the unthinkable. Losing. Charles Brennan, the $500 an hour attorney who hadn't lost a custody case in 12 years, closed his leather portfolio with movements that suggested he was reassessing his entire understanding of family law. Judge Reed continued, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent 25 years on the federal bench before semi-retiring to family court. Ms. Whitmore is granted supervised visitation, contingent on continued sobriety verification and completion of parenting classes. This court sees clearly that stability is not measured in square footage or bank accounts, but in consistency, presence, and love demonstrated through action rather than intention. Robert Whitmore stood abruptly. "Your Honor, this is—" Reed's eyes cut to him with the precision of a scalpel. "Mr. Whitmore, sit down, or I will hold you in contempt and have you removed from my courtroom. Am I understood?" The older man's mouth worked silently. His wife's hand on his arm pulled him back into his seat, but the rage didn't dissipate. It hung in the air like humidity before a storm. Reed looked at Marcus directly. "Mr. Coleman, you have demonstrated consistent, engaged parenting for 2 years while working 70 hours per week across 2 jobs. Your daughter is thriving by every measurable standard. This court has reviewed the evidence, teacher testimonials, community support, home evaluation reports, and finds that Zara Coleman's best interests are served by remaining in your primary custody." "Thank you, Your Honor." Marcus's voice came out rougher than intended, scraped raw by 2 months of fear that had started the moment Lauren's lawyer filed the petition. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell again. The courtroom began emptying. Jamal grabbed Marcus's shoulder, saying something about calling him later, about paperwork, about next steps. Marcus nodded without fully hearing. His ears were ringing. His hands were shaking. He'd won. After 72 hours of wondering if the system would look at his Third Ward apartment and his worn clothes and his bank account with $340 and decide that love wasn't enough, he'd won. Lauren approached before he could leave. Her parents and Brennan had already disappeared through the doors, but she hung back, moving toward him with the tentative steps of someone approaching a wounded animal. "Marcus, can we talk? Just for a minute." Jamal started to object, but Marcus touched his arm. "It's okay." They moved to the hallway bench. Lauren sat with space between them, her hands twisting in her lap, a nervous habit Marcus remembered from their marriage back before everything broke. "I'm sorry for all of it, for leaving, for lying, for putting you and Zara through this. You did the right thing today, telling the truth." Her laugh came bitter. "My parents have probably disowned me by now. The money, the apartment, all of it was contingent on winning this case. What will you do? Keep going to meetings, keep working, figure out who I am without their money or their expectations." She looked at him directly for the first time, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. "Can I see her sometimes?" "Supervised like the judge said." I just want to try to be a mother. The kind she deserves. Marcus thought about Zara's drawing from last night, the one she'd taped to the refrigerator. Daddy and me forever, spelled in careful first-grade letters with hearts floating around their stick figure heads. Thought about 2 years of bedtime stories and homework help and Saturday pancakes, while Lauren was chasing highs that mattered more than her daughter. We'll start small. Supervised visits. You stay clean, you show up consistently, we'll see what happens. Thank you. Tears slipped down Lauren's cheeks. Take care of her, always. She stood and walked toward the elevator without looking back. Marcus watched her go, feeling something like pity, tangled with relief. The elevator doors closed and she disappeared. His phone buzzed. Ms. Evelyn Carter, his 72-year-old neighbor who'd watched Zara since she was 4. How did it go, honey? We won. The response came immediately. Praise Jesus. Zara's been asking every 10 minutes when you're coming home. Marcus typed back. 20 minutes. Then he just sat there on the courthouse bench, letting the reality settle into his bones. His daughter was his. Legally, permanently, undeniably his. The title card would read, 3 months earlier, 72 hours before the hearing. But that was narrative structure, the way stories got told after they were over. In the moment, Friday night, 11:45, standing in Ray's diner with his apron still damp from spilled coffee, Marcus Coleman didn't know he was 72 hours from either salvation or destruction. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead with the particular frequency that suggested they'd burn out soon. Marcus untied his apron and dropped it in the laundry bin, his shoulders aching with the specific exhaustion that came from 14 straight hours of physical labor. 6 in the morning, he'd been crawling through ductwork in office buildings downtown, replacing HVAC systems for people who looked through him like he was furniture. 4 in the afternoon, he'd clocked in here, slinging eggs and coffee to truckers who at least had the decency to see him as human. The tip jar felt light when he emptied it. $47 in wrinkled bills and quarters that stuck together. He counted twice to be sure. $47. Enough to pay Ms. Carter for watching Zara. Enough for groceries if he stuck to rice and beans. Not enough to impress a family court judge who'd probably never set foot in a place like this. Marcus, you heading out? The night manager, Carlos, 60 years old and kind in the quiet way of men who'd worked service jobs their whole lives, wiped down the counter. Yeah, long day tomorrow. You work too hard, man. When's the last time you took a day off? Marcus tried to remember and couldn't. Can't afford to. Carlos shook his head but didn't argue. Drive safe. Storm's supposed to hit tonight. Outside, the October air carried the first whisper of winter and the electrical charge that preceded hurricanes. Marcus's Honda Civic sat alone under the parking lot light, rust spreading across the wheel wells like a disease he couldn't afford to cure. The dashboard clock glowed green, 11:47 p.m. The custody paperwork sat in the passenger seat where he'd left it that morning. Coleman v. Whitmore, custody hearing, Monday 9 a.m., Judge TBD. 72 hours. That's what people needed to survive in a desert without water. Marcus had 72 hours to prove he was worth more than the Whitmore's bank account, more than Lauren's parents' oil money, more than the $50,000 retainer they'd paid Charles Brennan, who'd never lost a custody case. His phone buzzed. Text from Jamal Washington. Prepare yourself. They have new witness. Not good. Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel. Not good. As if anything about this week had been good. As if Lauren showing up after 2 years with a sobriety chip and her parents' money somehow erased finding Zara alone in their old apartment, 4 years old and crying because her mother had been gone 18 hours chasing cocaine. The memory still woke him some nights. Zara's face when he'd walked through that door. The way she'd reached for him with arms that shook. The smell of neglect that had filled those rooms, spoiled milk and unchanged diaper, and the particular fear that came from being too young to understand why the person supposed to love you most could vanish without warning. He'd filed for divorce the next day, emergency custody 3 days after that, 2 years of relative peace, 2 years of building something that resembled normal, bedtime stories and Saturday pancakes and parent-teacher conferences where Miss Rodriguez told him Zara was thriving, happy, loved. Then Lauren's parents had hired Charles Brennan, and suddenly 2 years of being present didn't matter as much as the square footage of his apartment, or the fact that he worked 70 hours a week just to keep the lights on. The radio crackled. Tropical storm. Elena has strengthened to Category 1 hurricane status and is expected to make landfall along the Gulf Coast around midnight. Residents are advised to seek shelter immediately. Emergency services have suspended operations until the storm passes. Marcus glanced at the sky through his windshield. Black clouds rolled overhead, backlit by lightning that turned the world white for frozen seconds. The first raindrops hit like bullets. He merged onto Highway 59, pointing the Honda toward 3rd Ward and home. By the time he was 5 miles out, the rain had transformed from bullets to waterfall. His wipers struggled at their highest setting, creating brief windows of clarity before the deluge swallowed everything again. 18 hours awake. His eyes burned. His shoulders ached from crawling through tight spaces all morning. His lower back throbbed from standing on concrete floors all evening, refilling coffee for people who never looked up from their phones long enough to say thank you. But Zara was waiting. That's what mattered. Always waiting. Always trusting that Daddy would come home even when Daddy was late, even when Daddy was too tired to do anything but collapse beside her and read one story before his eyes refused to stay open. Ms. Evelyn Carter would have put her to bed by now, would have made sure she brushed her teeth and said her prayers, would have stayed until Marcus walked through that door, because Ms. Carter understood what it meant to show up, to be there even when being there was inconvenient. The highway stretched empty except for Marcus's lonely headlights. Smart people had already found shelter. Smart people weren't driving through a Category 1 hurricane because they'd worked 2 jobs and couldn't afford to call in sick. Couldn't afford to give Lauren's lawyers one more piece of ammunition. See, Your Honor, he's unreliable. Can't even show up to work consistently. Lightning split the sky directly overhead. Thunder followed immediately, shaking the car, and then Marcus saw them. Hazard lights blinking weakly through the downpour, a dark shape on the shoulder, barely visible. 2 figures standing in the rain beside what looked like an expensive car, silver Mercedes, the kind Marcus only saw when wealthy clients brought their vehicles into the HVAC shop for climate control repairs. He passed them, foot still on the gas, eyes forward. Not your problem. You've got enough problems. But something made him look in the rearview mirror. Through the rain and darkness, he could make out 2 people huddled together, shoulders hunched against the storm. Young, scared. Zara's face flashed in his mind. Not as she was now, but as she'd been that day 2 years ago. Alone, abandoned, waiting for someone to care enough to stop. Marcus's foot hit the brake harder than he meant to. The Honda fishtailed slightly on the wet asphalt before he regained control. He checked his mirrors, no other traffic, nobody else stupid enough to be out here, and executed a careful U-turn. The Mercedes came into focus as he approached. Silver E-Class, hood popped open, rain pouring into the engine compartment. 2 young women stood beside it. Black, early 20s, identical faces that marked them as twins. Expensive jackets soaked through. Designer shoes caked with mud. Marcus pulled onto the shoulder ahead of them and killed his engine. For a moment, he just sat there, hands on the wheel, asking himself what the hell he was doing. Lauren's lawyer would love this. Working-class hero stops to help stranded rich girls, trying to manufacture sympathy. Paint himself as some kind of saint. Except nobody would ever know. and these two young women were still standing in a hurricane. He grabbed his phone, battery at 42%, and stepped out into the storm. The rain hit him like a physical force, immediately soaking through his work shirt. The wind threatened to rip the door from his hands as he pushed it shut. He jogged toward them, squinting against water that ran into his eyes. They watched him approach. The one on the left stepped slightly in front of her sister. Protective instinct Marcus recognized from his own life. He had to shout over the thunder. "Car trouble?" The protective one nodded, water streaming down her face. Blonde braids, expensive to maintain, he knew from friends' complaints, hung in dark ropes around her shoulders. "It just died. We've been here almost an hour. Our phones are dead and nobody stopped." Her sister's voice came smaller but carried genuine gratitude. "Until you." Marcus moved to the Mercedes, hood already open to the elements. He pulled out his phone, using its flashlight to examine the engine. Water had pooled everywhere, but that wasn't the main problem. The battery terminals were heavily corroded, the connections loose enough that he could see the gap. Simple fix under normal circumstances. Impossible fix in the middle of a hurricane. "Your battery's shot." He had to yell to be heard over the wind. "You're not going anywhere tonight without a jump or a tow." The protective sister's shoulders slumped. "Can we call someone? Your phones are dead and so is your car battery. And in this storm," Marcus gestured at the empty highway, "nobody's coming." They looked at each other. Silent communication passed between them. Fear, exhaustion, the slowly dawning reality of being stranded. Marcus should have gotten back in his car, should have wished them luck and driven away. He had exactly zero obligation to these strangers, and plenty of reasons to get home. 42% phone battery, 72 hours until a judge decided if he was fit to keep his daughter. Rain hammering his shoulders hard enough to bruise. But he thought of Zara again. Thought of her standing somewhere in the rain years from now, scared and alone, hoping someone would care enough to stop. "I can give you a ride." The words came out before he could reconsider. "There's a hotel about 20 minutes from here. You can call a tow in the morning." Both women stared at him like he'd just offered them a winning lottery ticket. "You'd do that?" Marcus shrugged against the rain hammering his shoulders. "Can't leave you out here." "Come on." They grabbed expensive bags from their disabled car, Coach and Tory Burch, brands Marcus recognized from ads, and followed him to the Honda. The contrast was almost comical when they slid into his beaten interior, surrounded by fast food wrappers he'd been meaning to clean, and the faint smell of motor oil that never quite left his work clothes. But neither complained. They just looked relieved to be out of the storm. Marcus pulled back onto the highway, windshield wipers working overtime. The silence stretched for almost a minute before the woman in the passenger seat spoke. "I'm Naomi. This is my twin sister, Nia. Marcus Coleman." Naomi studied his profile in the dashboard lights. "You work on cars?" He glanced down at his uniform shirt, the embroidered patch that read Eddie's HVAC and Repair. HVAC, mostly. Air conditioning, heating systems. But I know my way around an engine. "You're soaked." "Yeah, well." Marcus turned the heater up, though it would take time to warm the car. "Occupational hazard of stopping in hurricanes." "Why did you stop?" Nia's question carried genuine curiosity, not accusation. "We waved at probably 30 cars. Everyone just kept going. Can't blame them. People are scared these days. Nobody wants to take chances on strangers." "But you did." Marcus was quiet for a moment, focusing on the road. The rain had started to ease slightly, downgrading from apocalyptic to merely terrible. "I have a daughter. She's 6. If she was ever stranded somewhere, scared, in the rain." He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. "What's her name?" "Zara. That's beautiful." A pause. "Do you get to see her often?" The question landed like a punch to the solar plexus. Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel, his jaw clenching before he could stop it. These women couldn't have known. Couldn't have guessed they'd just poked the rawest wound in his life. Every chance I get. The words came out rough, which might not be for much longer. He hadn't meant to say that, hadn't meant to crack open the door on the nightmare that had consumed the last 3 months. But exhaustion and stress had worn down his filters, and something about these strangers felt safe. They'd be gone in 20 minutes, never to see him again. No judgment that would follow him home. What do you mean? Nia leaned forward between the seats. Marcus stared at the road ahead, the white lines appearing and disappearing in the rain. His voice came out flat, emotionless, the way he'd trained it to sound when talking about things that could destroy him if he let them. Her mother and I are divorced. She's trying to take full custody. Says I'm not fit to be a father because I work too much, don't make enough money. Court dates Monday morning. That's horrible. Naomi's whisper carried genuine distress. It is what it is. Though his voice cracked slightly on the last word. I'm doing everything I can. 2 jobs, saving every penny, showing up to every school event. But sometimes, he stopped, aware he was sharing too much with strangers. Sometimes it feels like it's not enough, like the world's already decided I'm not good enough. The silence that followed felt different than before. Heavier, more personal. Our father's like that. Nia's voice came quiet from the back seat. Always working. We barely see him. Naomi picked up the thread. He has all the money in the world. Big house, nice cars, everything. But we'd trade it all just to have dinner with him once a week without him checking his phone. He thinks providing means everything, Nia added. Doesn't understand that we just want him there, present. You should tell him that. We've tried. Sadness colored Naomi's words. He doesn't listen. Says we don't understand what it takes to maintain our lifestyle. Sounds lonely. It is. Money doesn't fix loneliness. It just makes it more comfortable. The phrase settled into Marcus's chest, finding a home there. He'd been poor most of his life. Had known what it meant to choose between gas and groceries, between fixing the car and fixing the heater. But he'd never been lonely. Not really. Not with Zara. These young women had everything he lacked materially and nothing that actually mattered. What does your dad do? He's a judge. Naomi said it casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Family court. Of course he was. Marcus nearly laughed at the bitter irony. Here he was, driving 2 daughters of the judiciary through a hurricane while preparing to face a different judge in 72 hours. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. Marcus Reed, Nia offered. You might have heard of him. Marcus ran the name through his memory, coming up empty. No. My judge is... He tried to remember what Jamal had told him earlier. The name had slipped away in the chaos of everything else. I don't remember. My lawyer mentioned it. The conversation drifted after that. Naomi asked gentle questions about Zara, what she liked to draw, her favorite books, whether she was doing well in 1st grade. Marcus answered, surprised by how easy it was to talk about his daughter with these strangers. How the knot in his chest loosened slightly when he described Zara's laugh, the way she narrated her drawings with elaborate stories, how she'd started reading on her own and wouldn't stop showing him every new word she conquered. She sounds amazing. She is. No hesitation, no doubt. She's everything. Our dad never talks about us like that, Nia murmured, like we're his whole world. Maybe he does, Marcus suggested, just not to you. Some people don't know how to say what they feel, or maybe he doesn't feel it. Naomi's voice carried a resignation that came from years of disappointment. Maybe work really is more important to him. Marcus wanted to argue, to defend a man he'd never met, but he had no ground to stand on. He didn't know Judge Marcus Reed, didn't know if the man loved his daughters or merely tolerated them as obligations. Some fathers were built differently, saw providing as the sum total of their duty, never understanding that children needed presence more than presence. The Hilton emerged from the rain, its lit entrance a beacon of warmth and safety. Marcus pulled under the covered drop-off area, putting the car in park. Naomi and Nia gathered their bags, movements slow like they didn't want the ride to end. "Thank you." Naomi turned to face Marcus. "You didn't have to stop, but you did. It's fine. It's not fine. It's—" She searched for words. "It's the kind of thing that restores your faith in people." Nia leaned forward from the back seat. "I hope your judge sees what we see. That you're exactly the kind of father Zara needs." The words hit harder than Marcus expected. His throat tightened. "Thanks." Naomi pulled a pen from her purse, scribbling something on the back of a receipt. "Here's my number. If you need a character witness Monday, for something, we'd be happy to tell the judge about tonight." Marcus took the paper, though he had no intention of using it. Two college women testifying about a random act of kindness wouldn't change Charles Brennan's carefully constructed narrative about the unfit father who couldn't provide a stable home. But he appreciated the gesture. "Thank you. Really." They climbed out into the covered entrance, waving once more before disappearing through the sliding glass doors. Marcus sat there for a moment, engine idling, watching rain pour off the overhang in sheets. His phone buzzed. "Ms. Carter, honey, are you close?" Zara tried to wait up, but fell asleep. He typed back, 20 minutes. "Sorry it's so late. Don't apologize. Drive safe in this weather." Marcus pulled away from the hotel, pointing the Honda toward home. The radio had switched to local news, reports of flooding on the east side, downed power lines, emergency shelters opening for those who needed them. The storm was supposed to blow through by morning, leaving behind the usual debris and damage that came with hurricanes. His mind wandered to Monday, to standing in front of a judge whose name he couldn't remember and whose face he'd never seen, to Charles Brennan presenting photos of his small apartment, financial records that showed more month than money, work schedules that proved he was never home. Jamal Washington would do his best with what they had. Teacher testimonials, Ms. Carter's affidavit about Marcus's dedication, Zara's school records showing she was thriving. But Brennan had something they didn't. Lauren Whitmore's sobriety documentation, her new job offer, her parents' financial backing that could give Zara private schools and dance lessons and every material advantage. Maybe that's what judges looked for. Maybe stability meant money instead of love. Maybe the zeros in a bank account carried more weight than the 0 times Marcus had ever let his daughter down. The apartment complex came into view. 3 stories of faded brick and rusted railings, windows glowing yellow in the darkness. Home. Not much to look at, but it was theirs. Marcus parked in his assigned spot and jogged through the rain to the covered stairwell. His boots left wet prints on the concrete steps leading to the second floor. The door to apartment 2B opened before he could get his key out. Ms. Evelyn Carter stood there in her floral housecoat, silver hair pulled back, face lined with 70 years of life that had taught her when to speak and when to listen. "Honey, you're soaked through. It's biblical out there." Marcus stepped inside, immediately lowering his voice. The apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of the window unit struggling against October's last gasp of heat. "She's asleep on the couch. Tried to stay awake, but her eyes wouldn't stay open past 10. Ms. Carter gathered her knitting bag, movements slow and deliberate. "She drew you something. It's on the table." Marcus pulled out his wallet, extracting a $20 bill that represented tomorrow's lunch. He held it out to her. She waved it away. "Honey, keep it. You need it more than I do. Mrs. Carter, I mean it." Her voice carried that Southern Baptist steel that allowed no argument. "You've got that court date Monday. You save every penny." Marcus's throat tightened. He tucked the bill into her hand anyway, closing her fingers around it. "You've helped me more than you know. Please." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Her free hand came up to pat his cheek, the gesture so maternal it made his eyes burn. "The Lord doesn't bring us this far to abandon us now, sweetheart. You remember that." She left, pulling the door shut with a quiet click. Marcus stood in the entryway, water dripping from his clothes onto the cheap linoleum, listening to the sound of his daughter's breathing from the living room. He set his work bag down carefully, moved through the small kitchen where dishes sat clean in the drainer, and Zara's plastic cup waited on the counter, ready for morning. Found his daughter exactly where Ms. Carter had said. Zara lay on the threadbare couch, covered by the quilt Ms. Carter had made for her 3rd birthday. One arm hung off the edge, fingers curled loosely. Her dark hair spread across the pillow, face peaceful in sleep. 6 years old and already the most beautiful thing Marcus had ever created. On the coffee table sat her latest drawing, held down by a crayon box. Marcus picked it up carefully. 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, standing beside something that might have been an air conditioning unit. Daddy and me fixing things written across the top in Zara's careful 1st-grade letters. Hearts floating around their heads. Something in Marcus's chest cracked. He sank onto the edge of the couch, drawing still in his hands, and just looked at his daughter. She stirred, eyelids fluttering. "Daddy." "Hey, baby girl." He brushed hair away from her face. "Sorry I'm late." Zara's eyes opened fully, immediately tracking to his wet clothes. "You're all wet. Big storm out there." She sat up, rubbing her eyes. The quilt fell away and Marcus could see she was wearing her favorite pajamas, purple with stars that were starting to fade from too many washes. "Did you see my picture?" "Just now. It's perfect. That's us from when you fixed Mrs. Carter's air conditioning and I helped. You were a very good helper." Marcus set the drawing down, pulling Zara into his lap. Even though she was getting too big for this, even though she'd probably squirm away in a minute, for now she settled against his chest, small and warm and real. "Daddy." "Yeah, baby." Mrs. Carter said Monday is an important day. Marcus's heart stuttered. "She did?" "She said you have to go somewhere important." But she didn't say where. Zara tilted her head back to look at him, brown eyes serious in a way 6-year-olds shouldn't have to be. "Where are you going?" He should have prepared for this, should have come up with something to say that was honest without being terrifying. But exhaustion and emotion had burned through his defenses. "Daddy has to go to court. It's a place where judges make decisions." "What kind of decisions?" Marcus's arms tightened around her. "Decisions about families, about where kids should live." Zara went very still. When she spoke again, her voice came out small and scared. "Mommy said I might have to live with her. That you can't take care of me." The words landed like physical blows. Marcus closed his eyes, fighting back the rage that wanted to explode at Lauren for putting this fear into their daughter, for making Zara worry about things that should never touch a child's world. "Zara, look at Daddy." She turned in his lap, studying his face with an intensity that reminded Marcus of how perceptive she'd always been, how she could read emotions he tried to hide. "Mommy is wrong." He kept his voice steady, certain, even though nothing felt certain anymore. "Daddy can take care of you. Daddy will take care of you. No matter what happens Monday, I'm your dad, and I love you more than anything in this world. I don't want to leave you." Tears gathered in her eyes. "You won't have to, baby. I promise." It was a promise he had no idea if he could keep. A promise that might shatter Monday morning when some judge looked at financial statements and work schedules and decided that money mattered more than presents. But Zara needed to hear it, needed to believe her world wasn't about to collapse. Marcus held his daughter on that worn couch while rain hammered against the windows, while the cheap wall clock ticked toward Saturday, while 72 hours became 71 and kept counting down. He held her until her breathing evened out again, until sleep pulled her back under, until he could carefully carry her to her small bedroom and tuck her into a bed he'd assembled from IKEA with instructions he could barely follow. The room was tiny, barely fit the bed and dresser. But Marcus had made it special, painted the walls purple because Zara said it was a happy color, built a bookshelf from scrap wood because new furniture wasn't in the budget. Hung curtains Ms. Carter had sewn, covered in butterflies and flowers. This room held more love than money could buy. But would a judge see that? Or would he see peeling paint around the window frame and a handmade bookshelf and curtains from a neighbor instead of a decorator? Marcus pulled Zara's door almost closed, leaving it cracked the way she liked. He moved through the apartment on autopilot, locked the front door, turned off lights, checked that tomorrow's work clothes were ready. His phone buzzed again. Text from Jamal Washington. "We need to talk before Monday. Can you come to my office Saturday at 10 a.m.? Marcus typed back. "I'll be there." He should sleep. Should try to get a few hours before morning came and responsibilities piled back on. But his mind wouldn't settle. Kept circling back to Naomi and Nia's words about their father, about money not fixing loneliness, about choosing presence over providing. Marcus moved to Zara's doorway again, standing there and watching her sleep. This was what mattered. This small person who trusted him completely, who drew pictures of them together, who'd never once complained about their cramped apartment or second-hand clothes, or the fact that her father worked himself to exhaustion. She just wanted him there. And he would be. No matter what Monday brought, no matter what judge decided, Marcus would fight with everything he had to stay in this little girl's life. Even if everything he had wasn't enough. The rain had finally started to ease, the hurricane downgrading to tropical storm as it moved inland. Marcus stood at his daughter's doorway, wet clothes clinging to his skin, exhaustion pulling at his bones, and made a silent vow. Give me Monday. Give me a chance to prove that love counts for something, that showing up matters more than showing off, that this child deserves her father, even if her father can't afford the things her mother's parents can buy. Just give me a fighting chance. Thunder rumbled in the distance, already fading. The storm was passing. Monday was coming, and Marcus Coleman had 71 hours left to prepare for the most important battle of his life. Saturday morning arrived with deceptive sunshine, the kind that followed storms and pretended the world hadn't just been drowning. Marcus woke to Zara's weight on his chest, her small hand patting his face with increasing urgency. "Daddy, you forgot to change clothes." He blinked at the ceiling, realizing he'd fallen asleep in yesterday's damp work shirt. His neck ached from the angle against the couch arm, and when he moved, his spine cracked loud enough to make Zara giggle. "What time is it?" "The big hand is on the 12 and the little hand is on the 8. 8 o'clock. 2 hours before he had to meet Jamal Washington. Marcus sat up carefully, Zara sliding into his lap with the easy trust of children who'd never been dropped. Through the window, Houston looked scrubbed clean, puddles reflecting blue sky like nothing catastrophic had happened overnight. "Want pancakes?" The question came automatically, part of their Saturday ritual. Zara's face lit up in that way that made every sleepless night worth it. "Can I stir?" "Always." They moved to the kitchen together, Zara dragging her step-stool to the counter while Marcus pulled out the Bisquick box. The familiar routine settled something in his chest that had been jangling since Jamal's text last night. Measuring cups, the satisfying crack of eggs, Zara's careful stirring that sent flour dust into the air and covered her pajamas. Not too fast or it gets lumpy. "I know, Daddy." She stuck her tongue out in concentration, the same expression she made when drawing. Marcus watched her stir, this small person who'd somehow become his entire world, and tried not to think about the fact that in 48 hours, a stranger in a black robe would decide if moments like this got to continue. The first pancake hit the griddle with a hiss. Zara abandoned her stirring to watch it bubble, pointing out shapes in the batter like other kids found animals in clouds. "Daddy, can we go to the park after breakfast? I have to meet with Mr. Washington this morning." Remember my lawyer? Her face fell in that particular way that gutted him every time. About Monday. Yeah, baby. About Monday. Marcus flipped the pancake. Golden brown. Perfect. But after that, we'll go. Just you and me. Promise. Promise? Promise. They ate at the small table that functioned as dining room, homework station, and art studio depending on the hour. Zara drowned her pancakes in syrup while Marcus picked at his own. His stomach had been unreliable for weeks, anxiety killing appetite until food tasted like cardboard. But he forced himself to eat because Zara was watching, because she needed to see Daddy was okay, even when nothing felt okay. Zara, listen. When I go see Mr. Washington, you'll stay with Mrs. Carter. I know, and Monday you won't come to court with me. You'll stay home. Zara set down her fork. Why can't I come? It's not a place for kids, but it's about me. Her voice carried logic that gutted him. Shouldn't I tell the judge I want to stay with you? Marcus's throat closed. He reached across the table, taking her syrup-sticky hand. You don't have to do that. The judge will make the right decision. But what if he doesn't know? What if nobody tells him I'm happy here? Baby, I am happy, Daddy. I don't want a bigger house or more toys. I want you. The words cracked something in Marcus's chest wide open. He pulled Zara from her chair into his lap, holding her against his heart. She smelled like syrup and sleep and everything good in his life. I know, sweetheart. I know. Then why does Mommy want to take me away? How did you explain addiction to a 6-year-old? How did you make her understand that Lauren's sickness had nothing to do with Zara being lovable or wanted? That sometimes broken people broke everything around them, even their own children. Mommy made some mistakes, but she loves you. If she loves me, why did she leave? Marcus had no answer that wouldn't damage either Lauren or Zara's ability to trust people. So he just held her tighter and let the question dissolve into silence, into the sound of the window unit struggling and the muffled television from the apartment next door. Ms. Carter knocked at 9:30, arriving with her knitting bag and the patience of someone who'd raised 4 children and buried 1 husband. She took one look at Marcus's face and shooed him toward the door. Go on. Me and Zara will be just fine. Won't we, baby? Zara nodded, already reaching for the art supplies Ms. Carter kept in her bag for these occasions. Marcus grabbed his keys and wallet, the wallet still holding that $20 bill Ms. Carter had tried to refuse, and headed out into morning sunshine that felt obscene after last night's apocalypse. The legal aid office occupied the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades. Water-stained ceiling tiles, fluorescent lights that hummed with electrical illness, the smell of old coffee and older dreams. Marcus found Jamal Washington in a windowless conference room, surrounded by folders that spilled across a table scarred with initials and coffee rings. Jamal looked up when Marcus entered, exhaustion written in the lines around his eyes. 40 years old and already going gray, wearing a suit that had been nice once but now showed wear at the elbows and collar. A good man doing impossible work for people who couldn't afford better. Marcus, sit. The chair scraped against linoleum. Marcus sat, hands clasped on the table, and waited for whatever bomb Jamal was about to drop. I'll be straight with you. This isn't good. Jamal opened the top folder, revealing photographs. Marcus's apartment building. The cracked parking lot, the rusted railings. Interior shots that made the small rooms look even smaller. The worn couch. The second-hand furniture. The kitchen with its peeling linoleum. Brennan has all of this. He'll present it Monday as evidence of inadequate living conditions. It's not inadequate. It's clean. It's safe. I know. Jamal held up a hand. But look at it through a judge's eyes. Compare it to what Lauren can offer. He pulled out more photos. A high-rise building in River Oaks, all glass and steel. An apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows, granite countertops, hardwood floors. Furnished like a magazine spread. Her parents are paying for this. 2 bedrooms, 1,400 square feet. They've already hired an interior decorator for what they're calling Zara's room. Marcus stared at the images, feeling something cold settle in his stomach. She doesn't even have Zara yet, and she's decorating a room. It plays well in court, shows planning, preparation, commitment to providing a stable environment. It shows money. Bitterness leaked into Marcus's voice. That's all it shows. Jamal pulled out another folder. Brennan also has your work schedules for the past 6 months. 70 to 75 hours a week, Marcus. He's going to argue you're never home, that Zara spends more time with Ms. Carter than with you. Because I'm working to support her. I know, but what am I supposed to do? Marcus's voice rose, frustration and fear combining into something that tasted like acid. Cut my hours and not make rent? Choose between keeping a roof over her head and being there for bedtime? There's no winning. If I work less, I can't afford to keep her. If I work more, I'm not present enough. So what the hell am I supposed to do? Jamal let the outburst settle before speaking again, his voice quiet and steady. We focus on what we have. Teacher testimonials. Miss Rodriguez says you've never missed a parent-teacher conference. Ms. Carter's affidavit about your dedication. Zara's school records showing she's thriving, happy, well-adjusted. Is it enough? I don't know. Honesty, at least. Brennan is good at his job. He'll make Lauren look like a recovering saint who's overcome adversity. He'll make you look like a struggling single father who can't provide adequately. Marcus's head dropped into his hands. 48 hours. 48 hours until his entire world got decided by someone who'd never met him, never seen him with Zara, never witnessed the 1,000 small moments that made them a family. There's something else. Jamal's tone shifted, carrying a weight that made Marcus look up. Lauren has a new witness, child psychologist, Dr. Helen Morrison. She's going to testify that children need consistent parental presence and that 70-hour work weeks constitute inconsistent presence regardless of how much you love Zara. They found an expert to say I'm a bad father because I work to feed my daughter. They found an expert to provide professional opinion that supports their narrative. Jamal closed the folders, stacking them carefully. But we have our own expert, Dr. Simone Washington. She'll testify that Zara shows all signs of secure attachment, healthy development, and thriving in current circumstances. Who's our judge? Marcus tried to remember what Jamal had mentioned earlier in the week. The name had slipped through the cracks of his exhausted mind. You told me. I don't remember. Marcus Reed, retired from federal bench 5 years ago. Now family court, tough but fair, doesn't get influenced by money or status. He'll look at the facts, the evidence, what's actually best for Zara. Marcus Reed. The name tickled at Marcus's memory, but he couldn't place it immediately. Then it hit him like cold water. The twins from last night. Our father's a judge. Marcus Reed. Is that good or bad? Neither. Jamal leaned forward. He's tough but fair. Won't go easy on anyone because of race or class. He holds everyone to the same standard. That's good for us. We have the relationship, the bond. Lauren has money but no history of being present. She has sobriety documentation though, right? Proof she's been clean. 9 months. NA meetings, counseling, the whole program. Jamal's expression showed what he thought of 9 months against 2 years of abandonment. It's something, but it's not enough to erase what happened. Marcus wanted to believe that, wanted to trust that a judge would see through Lauren's manufactured redemption to the truth underneath, that she was fighting for Zara because her parents demanded it, not because she'd suddenly discovered maternal instinct. But wanting and getting were different things separated by courtroom procedure and legal precedent, and the fact that judges were human and humans made mistakes. What do I need to do? Monday morning, 9 sharp. Wear your best. Answer questions directly. Don't volunteer extra information. Let me handle Brennan. And Marcus, Jamal's eyes held his. No matter what he says about you, stay calm. He's going to try to provoke you, make you look unstable or aggressive. Don't give him that. I can stay calm. I know you can. But it's going to be hard, hearing someone attack your character, question your ability to parent. Jamal gathered his folders. One more thing. I need to ask about something. Did you have any contact with Judge Reed before this case? Marcus's stomach dropped. Last night, the storm. The twins stranded on Highway 59. He'd known the name sounded familiar but hadn't connected it until now. Hadn't realized the judge was their father until this exact moment. I helped his daughters last night. During the hurricane. They were stranded with car trouble. I drove them to a hotel. Jamal went very still. You what? Their car died on the highway. I stopped, gave them a ride. I didn't know who they were until after. They mentioned their father was a judge named Marcus Reed, but I didn't connect it to my case until just now. Did you tell them about your custody hearing? They asked why I looked exhausted. I said I had court Monday. They asked what kind, and I told them. Custody case. Marcus's heart was hammering now. Is that bad? I didn't seek them out. I just stopped to help. Jamal ran a hand over his face. It's a conflict of interest. Technically, Reed should recuse himself if there's any appearance of connection between you. But I didn't. I know. But Brennan could argue you manufactured the connection, that you stopped specifically to help the judge's daughters to gain favor. That's insane. I had no idea who they were. I believe you. But what matters is how it looks. Jamal pulled out his phone, checking something. They reached out to you after? Yeah, text this morning. Said their father wants to meet me before the hearing. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. at some cafe. Marcus's blood went cold. Meeting the judge before the hearing? That's highly irregular. Improper, actually. But Jamal stopped, thinking. If Reed initiated it, if he's disclosing the potential conflict himself, that's different. He's being transparent. The question is whether you should go. Should I? Jamal was quiet for a long moment. Legally, I should tell you no. It creates appearance of impropriety. But tactically, if Reed wants to meet you, wants to understand who you are beyond paperwork, that could work in your favor. He paused. Or it could backfire spectacularly if Brennan finds out. What do you think I should do? I think you should be very careful. If you go, don't discuss your case. Don't ask for favors. Don't make it look like you're trying to influence him. Just be yourself. Be the father those twins saw last night who stopped in a hurricane. Marcus nodded, but his mind was spinning. The judge's daughters. The same judge who'd decide Zara's fate. The coincidence was either divine intervention or catastrophic timing, and he had no idea which. They talked for another 30 minutes, Jamal walking Marcus through potential questions, likely attacks, the order of proceedings. By the time Marcus left, his head was spinning with information that felt simultaneously crucial and useless. He knew what Brennan would say, knew how they'd attack, knew exactly how the trap would close. Knowing didn't mean escaping. Herman Park Playground was crowded with post-storm families when Marcus arrived with Zara just after noon. Parents grateful for sunshine. Exhausted children who needed to burn energy after being cooped up overnight. Marcus pushed Zara on the swings, watching her hair fly as she soared higher, her delighted shrieks cutting through the ambient noise of other kids playing. More, Daddy! He pushed harder, her arc reaching the apex where physics briefly suspended her before gravity reclaimed its hold. For these moments, nothing else existed. Not Monday's hearing, not Brennan's photographs, not the $50,000 retainer that bought lawyers who never lost. Eventually, she jumped off mid-arc, landing in the mulch with a stumble that became a laugh. She ran to the slide, joining 3 other kids in a race to the top. Marcus settled onto a bench, keeping her in sight while his mind wandered places it shouldn't. What would happen if he lost? Would they let him say goodbye? Would there be some terrible handoff where Zara cried and reached for him while Lauren's parents looked on with satisfaction? Would Ms. Carter have to watch another child leave her care, powerless to stop it? His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Marcus almost didn't answer, but something made him swipe to accept. Mr. Coleman, this is Naomi. From last night, the storm. Marcus's brain took a moment to switch gears. Naomi. Hi. Is everything okay? Yes, fine. We got the car towed this morning. Everything's handled. A pause. Nia and we told our father about you, about what you did. Dread formed in Marcus's chest. The last thing he needed was more complications, more people knowing his business. You didn't have to do that. We wanted to. We told him about finding us in the storm, about driving us to safety, about your daughter in the custody hearing. Another pause, longer this time. He wants to meet you before the hearing. Marcus watched Zara slide down, her smile visible even from 30 feet away. Jamal's words echoed, highly irregular, improper, appearance of impropriety. I don't think that's a good idea. He said to tell you there's no obligation. I think we made him realize some things, about being absent, about what matters. Naomi's voice carried something pleading. He's trying, Mr. Coleman, and I think meeting you might help him understand how to try better. Marcus thought about the cramped apartment that had terrified him during Brennan's presentation, thought about peeling paint and second-hand furniture and the yellow walls Zara had chosen, thought about this judge who apparently needed lessons in fatherhood from a man who might lose his own daughter in 48 hours. When? Tonight. 7 p.m. There's a place called Magnolia Cafe near the courthouse. We could come to you, but no. The cafe's fine. Marcus agreed before he could reconsider, then immediately questioned the decision as the call ended. What was he doing? Meeting with the judge whose daughters he'd helped? It reeked of impropriety, of trying to manufacture sympathy through connections. Except Naomi had reached out to him. He hadn't asked for this. And if Reed wanted to understand what it meant to show up for your children, maybe that conversation needed to happen regardless of Monday's hearing. Zara ran over, breathing hard from playing. Daddy, I'm thirsty. They walked to the water fountain together, Zara gulping while Marcus held back her hair. Simple moment, meaningless in the grand scheme of custody battles and legal warfare. But these were the moments that defined his relationship with his daughter. Being there for the small needs, the everyday requests, the mundane necessities that added up to something that couldn't be bought or manufactured or presented in court. Would a judge understand that? Or would he see work schedules and financial statements and miss everything that mattered? Sunday morning brought the kind of Texas heat that October sometimes forgot to pack away. Marcus laid his only suit across the bed, the one he'd bought for his wedding 8 years ago, before Zara, before Lauren's addiction had carved their lives into before and after. The jacket was snug across his shoulders now. 2 years of manual labor had built muscle that dress clothes weren't designed for. He tried it on, checking the mirror that hung on the back of his bedroom door. The man looking back seemed like a stranger playing dress-up. Marcus Coleman didn't belong in suits. He belonged in work clothes with company logos, steel-toed boots, hands that fixed things for a living. But Monday required costumes. Ms. Carter arrived with an iron she'd brought from her own apartment, insisting on pressing the shirt and pants until they looked almost new. She worked in Marcus's living room while Zara colored at the table, humming something off-key and beautiful. Honey, you're going to be fine. Marcus wanted to believe her, wanted to have the faith that seemed to come so easily to Ms. Carter, that certainty that God or the universe or simple justice would prevail. But he'd seen too much of the world to trust in fairness. What if I'm not? What if the judge looks at my bank account and Lauren's trust fund and decides money wins? Ms. Carter set the iron down, fixing him with eyes that had witnessed enough of life to know there were no guarantees. Then you appeal. You fight. You don't give up on that little girl. She nodded toward Zara. But I don't think it's going to come to that. Why not? Because that child is happy. Any fool can see it, and judges aren't fools. Marcus hoped she was right, hoped that happiness counted for more than hardwood floors and granite countertops, that love could outweigh financial statements. But hope felt dangerous when you had everything to lose. The afternoon stretched long and anxious. Marcus tried to eat but couldn't. Tried to focus on anything other than tomorrow but failed. His mind kept circling back to the courtroom he'd never seen, the judge he'd never met, the moment when someone else would decide his daughter's fate. At 6:30, he kissed Zara goodbye. She was staying with Ms. Carter overnight, a precaution in case he needed to prepare late into the evening, and headed to Magnolia Cafe. The place was small and crowded, filled with the Sunday dinner rush. Marcus found a corner booth and ordered coffee he didn't want, nursing it while watching the door. Naomi and Nia arrived at 7 sharp, followed by a man who could only be their father. Tall, silver-haired, late 50s, with the kind of bearing that came from years of having people stand when you entered a room. He wore casual clothes, jeans and a button-down, but carried himself like the suit was implied. Naomi spotted Marcus and waved, leading her father over. Up close, Marcus Reed had eyes that assessed without judging, the kind of gaze that came from decades of weighing evidence and testimony. "Mr. Coleman, thank you for meeting us." They shook hands, Reed's grip firm but not aggressive. The twins slid into the booth across from Marcus, their father following. "My daughters tell me you helped them Friday night, that you stopped in a hurricane when no one else would." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. It wasn't anything special. They needed help. It was special to them. Marcus Reed's eyes moved to his daughters, something complicated passing across his features. "They said you have a daughter." "Zara?" "Yes. They also said you're facing a custody hearing tomorrow." Heat crept up Marcus's neck. This was a mistake. Meeting with the judge, discussing his case, letting these strangers into his problems. "I shouldn't be talking about this. You're not in my court." Reed's tone gentled. "And I'm not here as a judge. I'm here as a father who's been doing everything wrong, talking to a father who seems to be doing everything right." The statement surprised Marcus enough that he looked up, meeting Reed's eyes directly. "My daughters told me about your conversation Friday night, about working 2 jobs to support Zara, about showing up even when you're exhausted." Reed's voice carried something that might have been shame. "They compared you to me, found me wanting." Nia reached for her father's hand. "Dad, that's not—" "It's true." Reed didn't pull away from his daughter's touch, but kept his attention on Marcus. "I've spent 20 years building a career, told myself that providing for them was enough, that they understood why I missed recitals and graduations and regular Tuesday dinners." "We didn't understand." Naomi's voice came soft. "We just learned to expect it." The pain in Reed's expression felt familiar. Marcus recognized it from every time he'd had to leave Zara with Ms. Carter to work a double shift. Every parent-teacher conference he'd arrived late to, every bedtime story he'd missed because exhaustion had dragged him under. "You work 2 jobs," Reed continued. "You could use that as an excuse to be absent, but from what my daughters tell me, you're still there for Zara in all the ways that matter. I try to be. That's more than most people do." Reed leaned back, something contemplative in his posture. "What does your lawyer say about tomorrow? That I'm outgunned but not out of the fight?" Marcus heard himself talking, sharing details he probably shouldn't with a judge, but there was something about Reed that invited honesty. Maybe the judicial training that made confession feel natural. "My ex-wife's parents hired Charles Brennan, $50,000 retainer." Reed's eyebrows rose slightly. "Brennan doesn't lose custody cases. I know, but he's also a bully who relies on intimidation over substance. If you have the relationship with your daughter, the documented presence, Brennan's money won't matter." A pause. "Who's your judge?" The question hung in the air. Marcus met Reed's eyes. You are. Marcus Reed, Family Court. The name sat between them for 3 beats before Reed's expression shifted. Recognition, calculation, immediate understanding of the ethical minefield they'd just stepped into. I see. Reed's voice stayed carefully neutral. And you knew this when you agreed to meet me? Not until yesterday, when my lawyer told me. Marcus's heart hammered. I should go. This looks like... I didn't mean... Mr. Coleman, wait. Reed's tone carried authority that stopped Marcus mid-movement. I'm your judge tomorrow. That's true. I also owe you a debt for helping my daughters. That's also true. But you didn't seek this meeting. I did. It doesn't matter who, it matters entirely. Reed's gaze held steady. You stopped to help 2 strangers in a storm. You had no idea who they were, no agenda beyond basic human decency. My daughters reached out to you, not the other way around. I invited you here tonight to thank you and to be transparent about tomorrow's hearing. Transparent how? I'm going to disclose this meeting in court. Make it part of the record. Give both parties the opportunity to object to my presiding. If either you or Lauren Whitmore requests it, I'll recuse myself and a new judge will be assigned. Marcus's mouth went dry. You'd do that? I have to. Ethics require it. But I'm also telling you this now so you can make an informed decision. Reed leaned forward slightly. Tomorrow morning, I'll disclose our connection. Your lawyer will advise you to request recusal. Lauren's lawyer will certainly request it. The choice will be yours and hers. What if I say no? What if I want you to hear the case? Then you need to understand what you're agreeing to. Reed's voice dropped lower. I will scrutinize this case with absolute rigor. I will not give you preferential treatment because you helped my daughters. If anything, I'll be harder on you to avoid any appearance of favoritism. If the evidence supports Lauren's petition, I will rule accordingly. Do you understand? I understand. The certainty in Marcus's voice surprised even himself. But it was true. He trusted Reed to be fair more than he'd trust some random judge who didn't understand what it meant to struggle with presence versus providing. Why? Reed's question was quiet. Why would you want a judge who might overcompensate against you? Because you understand. Marcus glanced at Naomi and Nia, then back to their father. You understand what it means to be absent even when you're physically there. You understand that money doesn't fix loneliness, and you're trying to do better, which means you understand that it's never too late to show up. Reed absorbed this without speaking for a long moment. The cafe noise continued around them, clinking silverware, muffled conversations, the espresso machine hissing steam. For what it's worth, Reed finally said, my daughters were right. You are the kind of father I should have been. You're here now. That's what matters, because you showed me what here looks like. Reed pulled a business card from his wallet, writing something on the back. I have a friend who runs a commercial HVAC company. John Miller. They're looking for a supervisor, someone with experience and technical knowledge. This is his number. Marcus stared at the card, something prickling at his pride. I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's a job opening. But I understand if you'd rather not. Reed set the card on the table between them. I just wanted you to know it exists. The rest of dinner passed in careful conversation. Reed asking about Zara, Marcus asking about the twins' plans after college, everyone carefully avoiding mention of tomorrow. By the time they said goodbye in the parking lot, Marcus felt simultaneously more and less prepared for what Monday would bring. He drove home through warm evening air, Reed's business card sitting on the passenger seat where the custody paperwork usually lived. John Miller, HVAC supervisor, regular hours, decent pay, probably, but taking it would feel like accepting payment for helping the twins, which would poison everything about why he'd stopped that night. Ms. Carter was on the couch when Marcus got home, Zara asleep in her bedroom. The older woman looked up from her knitting. How'd it go? I think I either made the smartest decision of my life or just handed them everything they need to destroy me. Ms. Carter patted the couch beside her. "Sit down, honey. Tell me." So he did. Told her about the meeting, Reed's offer to recuse, the job opportunity, the impossible choice between a judge who understood and a judge who might overcompensate. Ms. Carter listened without interrupting, her needles clicking rhythmically. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then, "That judge sounds like a good man. A man trying to do right, even when right is complicated. You think I made the right call, wanting him to hear the case? I think you followed your gut. And your gut has kept that little girl safe and loved for 6 years." Ms. Carter reached over and squeezed his hand. "The Lord works in mysterious ways. Maybe he sent a hurricane so you'd be on that road at that exact moment. Maybe he put those girls there for a reason. You think God cares about my custody hearing? I think God cares about children. And Zara deserves a father who stops in storms." Ms. Carter's eyes held his. "You go in there tomorrow and you tell that judge the truth. Not because he owes you, but because the truth is enough." Marcus nodded, but his throat was too tight to speak. He checked on Zara one more time. She'd kicked off her covers, sprawled across the bed in that boneless way kids slept. He pulled the blanket back up and stood in the doorway watching her breathe, counting down the hours until everything changed. Monday morning arrived with the weight of execution day. Marcus woke before his alarm, stomach churning. He showered, shaved carefully, put on the freshly pressed suit that Ms. Carter had made respectable. When he emerged from the bathroom, Zara was already awake, sitting on the couch in her pajamas, watching cartoons on mute. "You look fancy, Daddy." He sat beside her, pulling her close. "Daddy has to go to that important place we talked about. Remember? Court." "Yeah. Mrs. Carter will be here soon. You'll stay home today, okay?" Zara nodded against his shoulder. "Will you come back?" The question pierced his chest like shrapnel. "Of course I'll come back. Promise?" "I promise, baby girl. Daddy always comes back." Ms. Carter arrived at 8, shooing Marcus toward the door with the same maternal authority she'd wielded Saturday. "The Lord is with you. Go on." The drive downtown happened in a blur. Marcus found parking 3 blocks from the courthouse, fed the meter with quarters he'd been saving, and walked toward the building that held his future. Harris County Family Court occupied floors 3 through 7 of a building that had been modern in the 70s. He rode the elevator to the 4th floor, following signs to courtroom 4B. Jamal Washington waited outside, suit slightly rumpled, briefcase clutched like a shield. "You ready?" "No." "Good. That means you understand what's at stake." Jamal guided him to a bench. "Lauren will be here with Brennan and probably her parents. Don't engage. Don't react. Just get through this." 10 minutes later, the elevator doors opened and Lauren stepped out. Marcus hadn't seen her in 6 months, not since the last supervised visitation she'd missed. She looked different, healthier, cleaner, put together in a way that money enabled. Her blonde hair was professionally styled, makeup subtle, suit probably worth more than Marcus's monthly rent. Behind her came Robert and Patricia Whitmore, old Houston money in human form. Robert wore a Brooks Brothers suit, silver hair immaculate, expression carved from contempt. Patricia matched him in coldness, her designer clothes and perfect posture screaming superiority. And beside them, Charles Brennan, late 50s, shark eyes, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Marcus's car. He radiated the confidence of someone who'd never lost at this particular game. Lauren's eyes found Marcus across the hallway. Something flickered in her expression. Regret, maybe, or residual affection for the man she'd married before drugs destroyed their lives. But then Robert said something low and sharp, and Lauren's face smoothed into neutrality. Brennan approached Jamal, offering a handshake that was all professional courtesy with an undercurrent of predatory confidence. "Grant, shall we get started?" A bailiff emerged from the courtroom, calling them inside. Marcus followed Jamal through heavy wooden doors into a space that smelled like old paper and broken families. The courtroom was smaller than Marcus had imagined. Wood paneling darkened with age, fluorescent lights humming overhead, Texas and American flags flanking a bench that sat empty and waiting. Jamal directed Marcus to the defendant's table, scarred wood, metal chairs, a water pitcher that had seen better decades. Across the aisle, Brennan settled Lauren and her parents at the plaintiff's table, somehow more polished despite identical furniture. The bailiff positioned himself near the bench. All rise. The Honorable Judge Marcus Reed presiding. Marcus's world tilted sideways. He started to stand with everyone else, moving on autopilot while his brain short-circuited. He'd known. They'd discussed it last night. But knowing theoretically and seeing Reed walk through that door in black robes were entirely different experiences. Reed took his seat, reading glasses on a chain, silver hair catching the overhead lights. His eyes swept the courtroom with professional neutrality, landing on Marcus for one loaded second before moving on. Good morning. We're here for Coleman versus Whitmore, custody hearing regarding minor child Zara Coleman, age 6. His voice filled the space with the authority of someone who'd done this thousands of times. Counselors, state your appearances. Brennan stood smoothly. Charles Brennan for petitioner, Lauren Whitmore, Your Honor. Jamal rose slightly less smoothly. Jamal Washington for respondent Marcus Coleman, Your Honor. Reed reviewed the file silently, pages turning with deliberate care. The courtroom held its collective breath, waiting for what everyone sensed was coming. Before we proceed, I need to disclose a potential conflict of interest. Reed looked up, meeting Marcus's eyes for 1 second before addressing the room. Friday night during Tropical Storm Elena, my daughters experienced car trouble on Highway 59. Mr. Coleman stopped and provided assistance when no one else would. I wasn't aware of this connection until yesterday evening. The courtroom erupted in whispered confusion. Robert Whitmore leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. Lauren looked between her lawyer and her parents, lost. Brennan shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. I request immediate recusal. Noted. Reed's tone stayed level. I'm offering both parties the opportunity to object to my presiding. Mr. Coleman? Marcus felt Jamal's urgent whisper. Say yes. Request new judge, clean slate. But Marcus heard Reed's words from last night. If the evidence supports Lauren, I'll rule accordingly. Heard the understanding in Reed's voice about what it meant to choose between providing and presence. No objection, Your Honor. Jamal's shock was visible but silent. Across the aisle, Robert Whitmore's face went red, sensing disaster. Your Honor, Brennan started. Mr. Coleman has competent counsel. Reed cut him off. I'm confident he understands perfectly. He turned his attention to Lauren. Ms. Whitmore, this is your decision. Not your parents, not your attorneys. Do you object to my presiding? Brennan bent down, whispering fiercely. Robert Whitmore's mouth moved in what was clearly urgent instruction. Lauren listened to both men, then stood. I waive the objection, Your Honor. Ms. Whitmore, Brennan's professional composure cracked slightly. I said I waive it. Lauren's voice carried more strength than Marcus had heard from her in years. Robert Whitmore stood abruptly. Your Honor, my daughter doesn't understand the implications. Mr. Whitmore, you are not a party to this case. Reed's expression went cold. If you interrupt these proceedings again, I will hold you in contempt and have you removed. Am I clear? Robert sat, fury radiating from every line of his body. Both parties have waived the conflict. Reed's gavel came down. However, given the unusual circumstances, I'm ordering an additional home evaluation. Dr. Simone Washington will conduct independent evaluations of both residences. Reports due by Thursday morning. We'll reconvene Thursday at 9 a.m. to hear findings and proceed with testimony. Court is recessed until then. The gavel fell again. Marcus's stomach dropped. Thursday. They'd postponed 3 days, and in those 3 days Dr. Washington would see his cramped apartment, compare it to Lauren's River Oaks high-rise, document every way his poverty looked inadequate next to her parents' money. Jamal grabbed his arm as people started filing out. That was the biggest gamble I've ever seen in family court. It felt right. Right doesn't always win. And now we have a home study. Jamal ran a hand through his hair. Marcus, they're going to see your apartment. Compare it to what Lauren can offer. The optics are terrible, so we show them what matters. That Zara is happy, healthy, loved. I hope that's enough. Jamal didn't sound convinced. Dr. Simone Washington arrived at Marcus's apartment at precisely 2 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, clipboard in hand and camera bag slung over her shoulder. Professional suit, kind eyes, the expression of someone who'd seen enough broken families to know judgment helped nobody. Marcus had spent the morning cleaning obsessively, scrubbing baseboards that hadn't been touched in months, organizing Zara's toys into neat arrangements that lasted approximately 5 minutes after she woke up. The apartment still looked like what it was, small, worn, home to people who counted pennies, but at least it was clean. Zara hid behind Marcus's leg when he opened the door, her usual confidence evaporating in the presence of this stranger who'd come to measure their worthiness. Mr. Coleman. And you must be Zara. Dr. Washington knelt to the girl's eye level, movements slow and non-threatening. I'm Dr. Washington. I just want to talk with you for a little while. Is that okay? Zara looked up at Marcus for permission. He nodded, trying to keep his expression calm, even though panic clawed at his throat. Yet Washington rose, taking in the apartment with a sweep that seemed casual but missed nothing. The worn couch sagging in the middle, the television that predated flat screens, the kitchen visible from the living room, linoleum peeling at the edges where moisture had gotten underneath. May I look around? Of course. Marcus stepped back, letting her move through his life. She paused at the coffee table where Zara's latest drawing sat. 2 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun, Daddy and Me Forever scrolled across the top in careful letters. Dr. Washington made a note without comment. The kitchen inspection was thorough. She opened the refrigerator, groceries from yesterday still fresh, milk and eggs and vegetables that Marcus couldn't normally afford all at once. Checked the pantry where cereal boxes and pasta and canned goods lined up in rows, made notes on her clipboard. Do you cook for Zara every day? Yes, ma'am. Breakfast before school, dinner every night. Marcus's voice came steadier than he felt. Weekends we make pancakes together. It's our tradition. Does Zara help cook? She stirs the batter, gets more on herself than in the bowl usually. Zara giggled from behind his leg, peeking out at Dr. Washington with slightly less fear. The bedroom evaluation took longest, Sir. Washington spent 15 minutes in Zara's small room, photographing every detail. The purple walls Marcus had painted himself, working late nights while Zara slept at Ms. Carter's apartment. The bookshelf cobbled together from pallet wood he'd salvaged and sanded smooth. The bed with its princess comforter, last year's Christmas present that had required skipping 2 of his own meals to afford. She picked up a worn copy of The Giving Tree, pages soft from repeated readings. Is this Zara's favorite book? One of them. We read together every night before bed. More notes, more photographs. Dr. Washington examined the drawings taped to every available wall surface. Zara's artwork chronicling their life together. Daddy and me at the park. Daddy teaching me to ride my bike. Our family, which included Marcus, Zara, and Ms. Carter, but notably excluded Lauren. Zara, where's Mommy in your pictures? The question came gentle, but Zara's body tensed against Marcus's leg. Mommy's not there. Just Daddy and me. Dr. Washington absorbed this without reaction, making another note that Marcus couldn't read from his angle. Mr. Coleman, I'd like to speak with Zara privately now. Would you mind waiting in the living room? Every instinct screamed to refuse, to protect his daughter from questions that might hurt or confuse her. But refusing would look worse than whatever Zara might say. He knelt beside his daughter. Baby, is it okay if you talk to Dr. Washington alone? Daddy will be right outside the door. Zara's fingers tightened on his shirt. You won't leave? Never. I'll be 10 feet away. She released him slowly, watching as he backed out of her room. Dr. Washington closed the door to a crack. Marcus could hear murmured voices but not distinct words. He stood in the hallway, hands clenched into fists, counting his own heartbeats. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Through the gap in the door, he caught fragments. Do you like living here? Zara's voice, small but certain. Yes, this is my home. Would you like a bigger house? A pause that stretched Marcus's nerves taut. Then Zara, confused. Why? This is just right for Daddy and me. Do you miss Mommy? Another pause. Longer. Marcus stopped breathing. Sometimes. But Mommy went away a long time ago. Mommy left when I needed her. Daddy never leaves. Something in Marcus's chest cracked open. He pressed his palm against the wall, steadying himself. The door opened fully and Dr. Washington emerged, Zara trailing behind and immediately reaching for Marcus's hand. Thank you both. I have what I need here. She moved toward the front door, pausing before leaving. Mr. Coleman, a home isn't defined by square footage. Remember that. Then she was gone, leaving Marcus and Zara standing in their small apartment while the weight of judgment settled over everything. Wednesday morning, Marcus received Dr. Washington's report via email from Jamal. He read it 3 times on his phone, standing in the parking lot of the HVAC shop before his shift started. The Texas sun beat down on concrete that radiated yesterday's heat. The summary section hit him in waves. Coleman residence, 680 square feet, well-maintained, safe, child-appropriate. Child's room demonstrates significant parental investment and attention to child's needs. Evidence of stable routine, nutritional meals, educational engagement. Whitmore residence, 1,400 square feet, well-appointed, but lacks personalization for child. No evidence of preparation for child's daily needs. No toys, books, or items suggesting child's presence. The interview assessments were even more damning for Lauren. Minor child Zara Coleman, age 6. Articulate, well-adjusted, demonstrates strong attachment to father, expresses clear preference to remain with father, shows no signs of distress, neglect, or inadequate care. Petitioner, Lauren Whitmore, demonstrates surface-level knowledge of child's current needs and preferences, appears motivated by external pressures rather than intrinsic desire for parenting, lacks detailed understanding of child's daily routine, interests, or developmental needs. And then the recommendation that made Marcus's hands shake. Primary physical custody should remain with respondent Marcus Coleman. Petitioner Lauren Whitmore may have supervised visitation rights pending continued sobriety verification and completion of parenting classes. Jamal's text came through as Marcus finished reading. This is good, really good, but don't celebrate yet. Brennan will fight this hard. Marcus called him back, voice tight. What happens Thursday? Judge Reed will review the report publicly. Brennan can challenge it, but Dr. Washington's evaluations are respected. If the judge accepts her recommendation, Jamal let the possibility hang, then you keep Zara. Then the evidence strongly supports me keeping Zara. But we still have to get through Brennan's cross-examination, Lauren's testimony, all of it. Marcus spent the rest of Wednesday in a state of cautious hope that felt more dangerous than despair. Hope meant expecting something good, which meant the fall would hurt worse when it came. He worked his HVAC shift on autopilot, replacing ductwork in buildings where secretaries still looked through him. Came home to Zara and Ms. Carter, read 3 bedtime stories instead of 1 because tomorrow loomed and he needed these moments committed to memory in case they became finite. Thursday morning arrived wrapped in the kind of autumn clarity that made Houston almost beautiful. Marcus dressed in his suit again, the fabric already familiar from Monday's disaster. Zara watched from her bed, covers pulled up to her chin. "Daddy, will you know today?" He sat beside her, smoothing her hair. "Maybe, baby. The judge might decide today, or he might need more time. I want to stay with you. I know, sweetheart. And Daddy's going to do everything possible to make that happen." Ms. Carter arrived early, shooing Marcus out the door with a prayer and a firm hug that smelled like lavender and faith. The drive downtown passed in a blur of catastrophic scenarios. Brennan destroying Dr. Washington's credibility, Reed deciding the conflict was too great after all, Lauren's parents producing some witness who'd swear Marcus was unfit. The courthouse lobby was already crowded when Marcus arrived, people streaming toward elevators that moved with bureaucratic indifference. He rode to the fourth floor alone, emerging into the hallway where Jamal waited with an expression somewhere between hopeful and terrified. "Brennan's here. He looks ready to burn the building down. That's good for us?" "Maybe. Desperate lawyers make mistakes." Jamal adjusted his tie, a nervous habit Marcus had noticed Monday. "But desperate lawyers also take risks. Be ready for anything." They entered the courtroom to find Lauren already seated with Brennan and her parents. Robert Whitmore's jaw was set in a line that promised violence if only violence were legal in family court. Patricia stared straight ahead, ice in designer clothing. Lauren looked small between them, diminished by their fury. Brennan's eyes tracked Marcus across the room, calculating and cold. Reed entered at 9 sharp black robes settling around him like authority-made fabric. His eyes swept the courtroom with practiced neutrality, landing on Marcus for 1 microsecond before moving on. "We're here to review Dr. Washington's home study report. Counselors, you've both received copies?" "Yes, Your Honor," both Brennan and Jamal spoke simultaneously. "And we have significant concerns about the methodology and conclusions." Brennan stood, papers rustling. "You'll have opportunity to address those concerns, Mr. Brennan." Reed nodded to the bailiff. "First, I want to hear from Dr. Washington herself." Dr. Simone Washington entered from a side door, taking the witness stand with the ease of someone who'd testified hundreds of times. She swore her oath, settled into the chair, and met Reed's gaze with professional composure. "Dr. Washington, please summarize your findings for the court." She opened her own copy of the report, though Marcus suspected she'd memorized every word. "I conducted home visits to both residences Tuesday. At Mr. Coleman's apartment, I found a small but well-maintained living space. The child's room showed significant evidence of parental involvement: custom paintwork, handmade furniture, age-appropriate books and toys. The refrigerator and pantry were well stocked with nutritious food. Most importantly, the child showed strong attachment to the space and to her father." Brennan shifted in his chair, coiled tension looking for release. "At Ms. Whitmore's apartment, I found a spacious, professionally furnished residence. However, the designated child's room was essentially empty. New furniture still tagged, no personalization, no evidence that actual preparation for daily childcare had occurred." "And your interviews?" "Zara Coleman is a well-adjusted 6-year-old who demonstrates secure attachment to her father. She was articulate about her daily routine, her relationship with Mr. Coleman, and her feelings about her living situation. She expressed clear preference to remain with her father." Dr. Washington's tone stayed clinical, but Marcus heard what she wasn't saying directly. That Zara was thriving in ways children with unstable parents didn't. Ms. Whitmore presented well but showed limited knowledge of her daughter's current life. She couldn't name Zara's favorite book, current teacher, or close friends. She referred to hypothetical future arrangements rather than demonstrating understanding of actual child-rearing needs. Reed made notes, face unreadable. "And your recommendation?" "Primary custody should remain with Mr. Coleman. He has demonstrated consistent, engaged parenting over 2 years. The child is thriving in his care. Ms. Whitmore should have supervised visitation opportunities while she continues her recovery and completes parenting education." "Thank you, Dr. Washington." Mr. Brennan, your witness. Brennan rose like a snake uncoiling, all smooth menace and calculated threat. He approached the witness stand with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. Dr. Washington, how many square feet is Mr. Coleman's apartment? Approximately 680. And Ms. Whitmore's? 1,400. More than double the space. Would you agree that a child benefits from having adequate room? Room is a factor, but not the determining factor in child welfare. But it is a factor. Brennan paced, hands clasped behind his back. And Mr. Coleman's work schedule. You reviewed that? I did. 60 to 70 hours per week, correct? That's what the record showed. Which means he's not actually present for his daughter most of the time, despite your assessment of his engagement. Dr. Washington's expression didn't change. Quality of presence matters more than quantity of hours. Mr. Coleman's daughter showed clear evidence of secure attachment, which doesn't develop when a parent is genuinely absent. Brennan pivoted. You noted Ms. Whitmore couldn't name her daughter's current teacher. Couldn't that simply reflect 6 months of separation, not lack of care? It could. Combined with other factors, it suggested surface-level engagement. Surface-level engagement, or the natural knowledge gap created by Mr. Coleman systematically excluding her from their daughter's life? Jamal stood. Objection. Assumes facts not in evidence. Sustained. Reed's tone carried warning. Mr. Brennan, stick to questions about the evaluation. Brennan smiled, unfazed. Washington, did you evaluate Ms. Whitmore's sobriety documentation? That wasn't within the scope of my evaluation, so you don't actually know if she's maintained 9 months of continuous sobriety, attended all recommended meetings, completed her treatment program. I reviewed the documentation provided, but didn't independently verify. Yes or no, doctor? Did you verify her sobriety claims? No. And Mr. Coleman's apartment is in 3rd Ward, correct? That's correct. A neighborhood with higher than average crime rates. I didn't conduct a neighborhood crime analysis, but you're aware 3rd Ward has documented safety concerns that River Oaks does not. Dr. Washington's patience was showing cracks. Many factors contribute to child safety. Crime statistics are one consideration among many. Brennan pressed for another 10 minutes, trying to punch holes in conclusions that were backed by 2 years of evidence versus 9 months of promises. When he finally sat down, his expression suggested he knew he'd made no real headway. Reed looked to Jamal. Redirect? Just one question, Your Honor. Jamal stood. Dr. Washington, in your professional opinion, which residence showed evidence of being an actual home versus a showplace? Mr. Coleman's apartment was clearly lived in and loved. Ms. Whitmore's felt staged. No further questions. Reed excused Dr. Washington, then turned to Brennan. Does the petitioner wish to present additional evidence before I make my ruling? Brennan conferred with Robert Whitmore in urgent whispers, the older man's face progressively darkening. Finally, Brennan stood, jaw tight. Your Honor, we request Ms. Whitmore be allowed to address the court directly. You wish to put your client on the stand? We do. Jamal leaned close to Marcus. This is either brilliant or suicidal. Brennan doesn't put clients on unless he's desperate or they insist. Lauren stood, movements uncertain as she approached the witness stand. The bailiff swore her in. She settled into the chair, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on some point above everyone's heads. Brennan's questioning started gentle, walking Lauren through her rehab timeline, her NA meetings, her new job as an office manager at a dental practice. She answered with practiced calm, the testimony of someone who'd been coached extensively. Ms. Whitmore, why are you seeking custody of your daughter? Because I'm her mother. The words came automatic, rehearsed. Mothers are always best for their children, but you relinquished custody 2 years ago. Why now? Lauren's composure flickered. I was sick then. I'm better now. I deserve a second chance to be a good mother. And you believe you can provide better for Zara than Mr. Coleman? I know I can. I have a stable job, a beautiful apartment, family support. Zara would have opportunities she can't have living in a 600-square-foot apartment in 3rd Ward. Brennan nodded, satisfied. Your witness, Mr. Washington. Jamal approached slowly, his earlier nervousness replaced by something sharper. Marcus recognized the shift. This was Jamal in his element. Cross-examination where truth mattered more than polish. Ms. Whitmore, when did you last see Zara? 6 months ago. And before that? Lauren shifted in her seat. The supervised visitation schedule was sporadic. How many scheduled visits did you attend in the year before you filed this petition? I don't recall exactly. I have the records here. Jamal pulled papers from his folder. You were scheduled for 24 visits. You attended 7. Is that accurate? I was dealing with my recovery. Yes or no, Ms. Whitmore? 24 scheduled, 7 attended. Yes. And on 3 of those 7 visits, you arrived intoxicated, correct? Brennan shot to his feet. Objection, Ms. Whitmore completed rehab. This is character assassination. It goes to credibility, Your Honor. Jamal's voice stayed level. The petitioner claims she's a fit mother. Her past behavior is relevant. Reed nodded. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Ms. Whitmore. Lauren's eyes filled with tears. I was sick. I've explained this. I'm asking about facts, not explanations. 3 visits where you arrived under the influence. Yes or no? Yes. Jamal let the admission hang in the air, let it settle into the court record and the judge's mind. What's Zara's favorite book? The question shift caught Lauren off guard. What? Her favorite book? What does she like to read? We read lots of books. I don't remember one specifically. Who's her teacher? She's in 1st grade. The teacher's name, Ms. Whitmore? I don't know. Who are her friends? Marcus handles the school things. I haven't been involved. What does she like for breakfast? This is ridiculous. Lauren's composure shattered completely. I've been in treatment. I couldn't know every detail. Ms. Whitmore, Jamal's voice softened to something almost gentle. These aren't details. These are the basics of your daughter's life, a life you've been absent from for 2 years. Lauren's face crumpled. She pressed her hands over her eyes, shoulders shaking with sobs that sounded genuine because they probably were. Whatever else Lauren was, addict, absent mother, pawn in her parents' game, she was also a human being who'd lost 2 years to sickness and was realizing in real time what that cost. Ms. Whitmore, whose idea was it to file for custody? Yours or your parents'? Brennan stood again. Objection. Relevance. It's relevant to Ms. Whitmore's actual motivations versus claimed motivations. I'll allow it. Reed leaned forward slightly. Answer the question, Ms. Whitmore. Lauren lowered her hands. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. When she spoke, her voice barely carried past the witness stand. My parents said, they said if I didn't fight, they'd cut me off. No support for my apartment, my treatment, anything. Robert Whitmore surged to his feet. Lauren, be quiet. Reed's gavel came down hard. Mr. Whitmore, sit down immediately or I will have you removed. Robert sat, fury radiating from every line of his body. Patricia gripped his arm, her face carved from stone. Jamal pressed the advantage. So you're not seeking custody because you believe it's what's best for Zara. You're doing it because your parents threatened to withdraw financial support if you didn't. I want to be a good mother. That's not what I asked. Are you seeking custody because your parents threatened you? The silence stretched. Lauren looked at her father, at Brennan, at Marcus. Tears continued falling, but she made no move to wipe them away. Yes. The word dropped like a bomb. Marcus heard it but couldn't process it. Couldn't believe Lauren had just admitted the truth after months of manufactured custody battle. Brennan's face went white. He started to stand, then sat back down, recognizing that trying to salvage this would only make things worse. Reed's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in his eyes. Ms. Whitmore, let me make sure I understand. You're seeking custody of your 6-year-old daughter, not because you believe it's in her best interest, but because your parents threatened financial consequences if you didn't. Lauren nodded, then seemed to realize she needed to speak. Yes, Your Honor. And if I told you right now that the best thing for Zara is to remain with her father, what would you do? Lauren's hands twisted in her lap. The courtroom held its collective breath. I don't know. The honesty of it was devastating. I don't know what I'd do. Reed sat back in his chair, studying Lauren with an expression Marcus couldn't read. Thank you for your honesty, Ms. Whitmore. You may step down. Lauren returned to her seat on shaking legs. Robert Whitmore wouldn't look at her. Patricia's mouth had compressed into a line so thin it nearly disappeared. Reed turned to Brennan. Does the petitioner have any other witnesses? Brennan stood slowly, defeat written in every movement. No, Your Honor. Mr. Washington? Jamal shook his head. The respondent rests, Your Honor. Very well. Reed folded his hands on the bench. I've reviewed Dr. Washington's comprehensive report. I've heard testimony from both the evaluator and the petitioner. The facts are clear. Marcus's heart hammered so hard he thought it might crack his ribs. Mr. Coleman has demonstrated consistent, engaged parenting for 2 years. He has maintained stable housing, steady employment, and most importantly, a strong relationship with his daughter. The child is thriving in his care by every measurable standard. Reed's eyes moved to Lauren. Ms. Whitmore has been honest about her struggles and her motivations. That honesty is commendable. However, honesty doesn't change the fact that she's been largely absent from her daughter's life and appears to be seeking custody due to external pressure rather than genuine readiness for full-time parenting. Robert Whitmore's hands clenched into fists. Patricia stared straight ahead, rigid as carved marble. This court awards primary physical custody to Marcus Coleman. Reed's voice carried the weight of finality. Lauren Whitmore is granted supervised visitation rights contingent on continued sobriety verification and completion of a court-approved parenting program. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel fell. The sound echoed through Marcus's chest, through his bones, settling into the marrow where fear had lived for months. He'd won. Jamal was shaking his hand, saying something Marcus couldn't hear through the roaring in his ears. Across the aisle, Brennan was gathering papers with mechanical efficiency, while Robert Whitmore stood like a man preparing for war. Lauren remained seated, staring at her hands. Reed had already left the bench, his robe disappearing through the door before Marcus could process wanting to say thank you, or knowing that saying it would be inappropriate, or understanding that Reed had just given him back his daughter, his life, his future. The courtroom began emptying. Jamal steered Marcus toward the exit, still talking about next steps and visitation schedules and words that bounced off without sticking. In the hallway, Robert Whitmore blocked their path, his face gone red, veins standing out at his temples. This isn't over, Coleman. Marcus met his gaze steadily. Yes, it is. We'll appeal. Will you? The voice cut through Robert's bluster, calm and absolutely authoritative. Reed stood in the doorway of his chambers, no longer in his robe, just a man in a white shirt and suspenders. Mr. Whitmore, if you file a frivolous appeal, I'll personally ensure it's dismissed with prejudice and recommend sanctions for harassment. Am I making myself clear? Robert's mouth worked silently. Patricia pulled him away before he could say something that would land him in contempt. They disappeared into the elevator, leaving Lauren standing alone in the hallway. She approached slowly, each step seeming to cost her. Marcus, can we talk? Just for a minute. Jamal started to object, but Marcus touched his arm. It's okay. They moved to a bench against the wall, sitting with careful distance between them. I'm sorry. For all of it. For leaving, for lying, for putting you and Zara through this. You did the right thing today. Telling the truth. My parents are furious. They've probably disowned me by now. Lauren's laugh came bitter and broken. But you know what? I feel lighter than I have in months. What will you do? Keep going to meetings? Keep working? Figure out who I am without my parents' money or their expectations? She looked at him directly. Can I see her sometimes? Supervised like the judge said. I want to try to be a mother, the kind she deserves. Marcus thought about Zara's drawing, about 2 years of bedtime stories and Saturday pancakes, about the woman sitting beside him who'd finally admitted she wasn't ready but wanted to try. We'll start small. Supervised visits. You stay clean, you show up consistently, we'll see what happens. Thank you. Tears slipped down Lauren's cheeks. Take care of her. Always. She stood, wiping her face, and walked toward the elevator without looking back. Marcus watched her go, feeling something like pity mixed with relief and the cautious hope that maybe, eventually, Zara could have a relationship with her mother if Lauren did the work. Reed appeared beside him, silent until Lauren disappeared from view. You're being generous, given everything she put you through. She's Zara's mother. If she can get healthy, Zara deserves to have that relationship. Marcus stood, finally facing the man who'd held his daughter's fate in his hands. Thank you for seeing what mattered. I saw what the evidence showed. Dr. Washington's report was unambiguous. Reed paused. But I'll admit, helping my daughters gave me insight I might not have had otherwise. About what it means to be present versus simply providing. How are Naomi and Nia? Different. Better, I hope. We've been having dinner together. Actual dinner where I turn my phone off and just listen. Reed smiled slightly. They're teaching me how to cook. I'm terrible at it. It's never too late to learn. The words settled between them, carrying weight beyond cooking lessons. They stood in the courthouse hallway, two fathers learning what it meant to show up, and Marcus understood that the storm hadn't just changed his life. It had changed 3 lives, maybe more. They'd like to see you again. Both of them asked if you and Zara might come for dinner Saturday. No pressure, no obligation. Just, they'd like to say thank you properly. Marcus thought about Zara's question that morning. Will you know today? He could go home now and tell her that yes, he knew, she was staying with him forever. And maybe they could share that victory with people who'd helped make it possible, even inadvertently. Saturday works. What time? 7. Reed pulled out a business card, the one with John Miller's number on the back, and this offer still stands. No strings attached, just a legitimate job opening if you're interested. Marcus took the card this time, studying the number. I'll call him, for an interview, not because, I know. Reed's expression showed understanding. Call him because you're qualified and the position fits your skills. Everything else is separate. They shook hands and Reed disappeared back into his chambers, leaving Marcus standing in the hallway with a business card and custody of his daughter and the overwhelming need to get home, to see Zara, to tell her that nothing would separate them again. The drive back to Third Ward happened in a haze of relief so profound it felt almost painful. Marcus parked in his assigned spot and took the stairs 2 at a time, his hands shaking as he unlocked the door to 2B. Ms. Carter and Zara looked up from the coloring project spread across the coffee table. Ms. Carter's face asked the question before Zara could open her mouth. We won. Ms. Carter stood, pressing one hand to her chest. Praise Jesus. I told you, didn't I? The Lord doesn't bring us this far to abandon us. Zara launched herself at Marcus with enough force to nearly knock him over. He caught her, lifting her up, holding her against his chest while she wrapped her arms around his neck and her legs around his waist like she used to when she was smaller. I'm staying with you? Forever? Forever, baby girl. Marcus's voice cracked on the word. You're staying with me forever. Ms. Carter gathered her things quietly, giving them this moment. She squeezed Marcus's arm on her way out, her eyes wet. I'm proud of you, honey. So proud. After she left, Marcus sat on the couch with Zara still in his lap, neither of them speaking, just breathing together in their small apartment that was officially, legally, permanently theirs. Zara eventually pulled back to look at his face, studying him with that intensity she inherited from him. Are you happy, Daddy? Bigger than the sky, sweetheart. She giggled, the sound like sunlight after rain. Bigger than the sky. They ordered pizza that night, splurging because victories deserved celebrating. Ate on the floor surrounded by Zara's drawings while she chattered about her day with Ms. Carter, about the new girl in her class, about whether they could get a goldfish now that things were settled. Marcus listened, really listened. not thinking about tomorrow's shift or bills or court dates, just present in this moment with his daughter, who was his. Friday morning, Marcus called John Miller. The conversation lasted 20 minutes. His experience, the supervisor role, expectations, and responsibilities. Miller's voice carried the rough edges of someone who'd worked his way up from installation crews to corner office. Reed spoke highly of you, said you're the kind of guy who shows up and does the work without drama. I try to be. Can you come in Monday? 10 a.m. We'll talk details. I'll show you the operation, see if it's a fit. Marcus agreed, ended the call, and sat in the quiet of his apartment processing possibilities. A real job with regular hours, benefits, the chance to be home for dinner every night, the chance to build something stable for Zara without destroying himself in the process. Saturday evening, Marcus and Zara drove to West University Place, navigating streets where houses sat behind gates and landscaped yards. Reed's address led to a two-story colonial with white columns and black shutters, the kind of place Marcus would normally only see while driving past. Naomi and Nia answered the door together, identical smiles lighting identical faces. They'd abandoned expensive clothes for jeans and t-shirts, hair pulled back in casual ponytails. "Mr. Coleman, you came. Call me Marcus. And this is Zara." Zara had been bouncing with excitement in the car, but now pressed against Marcus's leg, suddenly shy. Nia knelt to her level. "Hi, Zara. Your dad told us you like to draw. We have a whole room full of art supplies. Want to see?" Zara looked up at Marcus for permission. He nodded. She took Nia's offered hand tentatively, letting herself be led inside. Reed appeared from deeper in the house wearing an apron that read "World's Okayest Cook" in faded letters. "Marcus, welcome. Fair warning, I'm attempting dinner. It may be inedible." The house's interior surprised Marcus. Comfortable rather than ostentatious, family photos covering walls instead of expensive art. Pictures of Naomi and Nia at various ages, graduations and birthdays and ordinary moments captured and displayed like treasures. Recent photos stood on the mantel showing Reed and his daughters at dinner, laughing. The three of them covered in paint, refinishing something wooden. Candid shots that spoke of time spent together rather than occasions documented. "Your home is beautiful. It's been empty too long. I'm trying to fill it with what matters." Reed led Marcus toward the kitchen where something was definitely burning. Damn it. He pulled a smoking pan from the oven, revealing what might have once been chicken, but now looked like charcoal. Nia appeared, taking in the disaster with practiced ease. "Dad, we talked about this." "Timer. You have to actually listen when it goes off. I thought I had more time." "The timer doesn't lie." She grabbed her phone. "Pizza okay with everyone?" The evening devolved into ordered pizza and genuine laughter. Zara came out of her shell around Nia and Naomi, the three of them spreading art supplies on the dining room table and creating masterpieces that involved more glitter than any surface needed. Marcus found himself relaxing for the first time in months, the weight of the custody battle finally lifting enough to let him breathe. He sat on the couch with Reed while the girls played, visible through large windows overlooking the backyard. Naomi told increasingly embarrassing stories about her father's attempts at domestic competence. Last week, he tried to do laundry, turned everything pink. The instructions were unclear. "Dad, it literally says, separate whites from colors on every machine." Reed took the ribbing with good humor, clearly enjoying his daughter's attention even when it came wrapped in mockery. Marcus recognized the shift. This man was actively trying to be present, stumbling through it but trying nonetheless. After pizza, while the girls played in the backyard, Reed and Marcus stood at the kitchen counter drinking coffee that Reed had managed not to ruin. "Can I ask you something?" Reed's tone shifted serious. "How do you do it? Work full-time, single parent, stay present for Zara?" Marcus considered the question, thinking about mornings he'd woken exhausted and repeated evenings he'd fallen asleep mid-story. "Honestly, I don't do it well. I'm tired all the time." I miss things, but the alternative is not being there at all. And that's not an option. You worked 2 jobs before this week. Yeah. Marcus sipped his coffee. Why? Because you had to. But also because you chose to show up even when it was hard. Reed paused. My daughters have been teaching me that providing isn't the same as presence. I spent 20 years confusing the two. It's not too late to learn the difference. That's what they keep telling me. Reed looked through the window at Naomi and Nia teaching Zara some complicated clapping game. I missed so much. Recitals, graduations, ordinary Tuesday nights. I can't get those back. No, but you have now. And now is where we live. The words hung between them. Simple truth that carried the weight of lessons learned too late, but not too late to matter. Through the window, all 3 girls dissolved into giggles when they messed up the pattern. Monday morning, Marcus interviewed at Johnson HVAC Systems. The facility was impressive, clean, organized, crews that clearly knew their work. John Miller offered him the position on the spot, pending background check and drug screening that Marcus knew he'd pass easily. $58,000 base salary, full benefits, 40-hour weeks, Monday through Friday, 7 to 4. When can you start? Marcus gave Eddie Sullivan 2 weeks' notice at the HVAC shop, and Eddie responded by throwing an impromptu celebration lunch for the whole crew. At Ray's Diner, Marcus gave them 1 week's notice and left with a card signed by every waitress wishing him well. 2 weeks later, Marcus started at Johnson Commercial. The work was challenging but manageable. The crew respected him, and for the first time in years, he left work at 4 p.m. and drove home with energy still left for his daughter. Saturdays became ritual with Reed and his daughters. Sometimes they attempted cooking together, Reed's skills improving slowly under Marcus's patient instruction. Sometimes they just ordered takeout and played board games that Zara usually won through a combination of luck and ruthless 6-year-old strategy. Lauren sent letters every few weeks, updating Marcus on her progress. 9 months became 12, then 15. She never missed a supervised visit, showing up sober and engaged slowly, carefully rebuilding something that might eventually become a relationship with Zara. 1 year after that storm, Marcus stood in Reed's backyard watching Zara play on the treehouse they'd built together over 3 months of weekends. Simple construction. Platform, ladder, walls, roof, but sturdy enough to last. Reed appeared beside him, 2 beers in hand. They'd developed this routine, standing on the patio while the girls played, talking about nothing and everything. You know what I've been thinking about? A year ago, my daughters were stranded in a storm. A stranger stopped when no one else would, and that stranger changed everything. I just gave them a ride. You did more than that. You reminded them that people still help each other. You reminded me what being a father actually means. Reed turned to face him. I spent 20 years building a career, telling myself I was providing for my daughters, but they didn't need what I could buy them. They needed me. You're here now. That's what matters, because you showed me what here looks like. Reed raised his beer slightly. To stopping in storms. Marcus clinked his bottle against Reed's. To showing up. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Zara and the twins create some elaborate game involving the treehouse and approximately 200 stuffed animals. The Texas sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. Marcus's phone buzzed. Text from Lauren. 18 months today. Counselor says I'm ready for unsupervised visits if you're comfortable with that. No pressure, just wanted you to know. He showed Reed the message. What do you think? I think she's been consistent. Shown up, stayed clean, done the work. Zara deserves a mother if her mother can actually be present. Marcus typed back. Let's start with a few hours, Saturday afternoon next week. We'll see how it goes. Lauren's response came immediately. Thank you. I won't let her down. Marcus hoped that was true. Hoped Lauren had found whatever she needed to be the mother Zara deserved. But he'd learned this year that hope required evidence, that trust was built in small increments over time. They'd take it slow, watch how Lauren handled responsibility, let Zara's comfort level guide the pace. Zara's laughter rang across the yard, pure and joyful. Nia was chasing her around the treehouse, both of them shrieking with delight. Marcus thought about that night 1 year ago, the storm, the decision to stop, the twins who'd become family, the judge who'd become friend, the small act of kindness that had rippled outward to change 3 lives. Sometimes that's all it takes, he thought. Showing up when no one else will, being present even when it's inconvenient. Stopping in storms because it's the right thing to do, regardless of recognition or reward. Inside the house, his phone rang. Naomi calling to say dinner was ready. Reed had managed not to burn anything. Could they please come eat before it got cold? Marcus called to Zara, and they headed inside together, her small hand in his, both of them walking into a house that had become second home, toward people who'd become family through choice rather than blood. The kind of family built not on obligation but on presence, gratitude, and the simple act of showing up. Marcus Coleman had stopped in a hurricane because it was the right thing to do. He hadn't known those 2 strangers were the judge's daughters, hadn't known that one act of kindness would change multiple lives forever. But sitting at Reed's dinner table that evening, Zara between Naomi and Nia, all 3 girls giggling, Reed attempting to serve vegetables he'd only slightly overcooked, Marcus understood what Ms. Carter had meant about the Lord not bringing us this far to abandon us. Sometimes storms reveal who we are. Sometimes helping strangers saves you as much as it saves them. Sometimes one choice in a hurricane becomes the foundation for family built not on blood or obligation, but on presence, on showing up, on the quiet daily choice to be there for people who need you. And sometimes that's enough to change our corner of the sky.